We are a little bit under the schedule, but still I think we are all right. It's noon, so because Mauro Carraro, sitting here, his presentation, his masterclass is featured at 1 o'clock, so we'll make sure that 1 hour will be enough. I'm presenting my special guest. I'm really happy that we have a nice round table. So starting from my left, Milivoj and Veljko Popović from Croatia, brothers, Lemonade Studio 3D, many things like you will talk about. Also, we have a film feature in a retrospective. It's She Who Measures that you did together. Chris Landreth, I would not present you always as the Academy Award winner because it's a little bit too much, but you're here.
But you did mention it now.
Yeah, I did. So Chris will present a retrospective in the jury programs. I'm really pointing it out like every day from today on at 15:00 at Slovenian Cinematheque. Don't miss those jury programs because we are presenting archival material. In Chris' case, it will be like his retrospective, but also like some special, like really early animation films that he made. I would just like to ask Maki to bring me my bag, which is like in front of you, the black bag, yeah, please. Where we will, the films that we could not put in the program. Chris was so nice that he brought those early things, and I have a book to show. I'm sure that Chris, you know it. It's Moving Innovation, A History of Computer Animation by Tom Sito. And actually many of those shorts that you will present, they are mentioned in the book. It's a book about, actually it's the American point of view. And I'm happy that at the Animateca we follow the world development. So it's a must book for the local guys. You can borrow it at the Slovenian Cinematheque library. So any interested, especially in this thematic and topic, this book from tomorrow on, it will be on Metelkova, where the Cinematheque library is. Milan Olimpijević, my dear colleague, program director of Anima Festival in Čačak, and actually together we compiled, we curate this 8 program retrospective. Milan saved me as well, like with a really great introduction that you can find in the catalog. I hope everybody has a catalog, otherwise please get it at the Kinodvor and Kinoteca Cinema. It's important, so it's not the text, especially Milan's one, is really an overview. Mauro Carraro, also a jury member and the sensible 3D guy, so-called, like this etiquette now it's on you. You will present as well your films in the program, but also films that affected your work, especially like French production, like your colleagues that you study with, or like, because we should say that France is like the country where 3D animation is taught for a long time, and they were one of the first. Maybe we will hear also about Canada and the States, but I don't think that school system is so good there as it's developed in France. And last but not least, Dusan Kastelic, which we are really praising him as a Slovenian author that really, I think, has his part in the history of 3D computer animation development, being an autodidact and finding really difficult ways to do his films, like in programs that usually are not used. Just to name a few, like Hash Animation was his first program, and then now it's Blender that he's using. We'll see also a expert, I think a 1 minute trailer from his new film that is almost done, and to mention as well, Dusan has a exhibition at the Modern Art Gallery, and tomorrow at 3 o'clock there will be like a guided tour for anybody interested. Like he's showing his comic art and the animation art. Okay, so behind me you can see the program description, or actually it's like we have 8 thematic programs, like all the films are here, and I think we really started strong. I have to mention, because before passing the word to Milan first, that we really tried hard to start this retrospective with some jewels, and those jewels are films by Stan van der Beek, by the Whitney Senior, by who else is there? Like I think John Shuri. But those films are in the possession. The prints, original prints, are in the possession of the Academy Film Archive in Los Angeles. And as we were a little bit late to arrange this program, I'm happy to let everybody know, like especially people from Ljubljana, that it will be presented at the Slovenian Cinematheque sometimes next year. We have this special screening really about the pioneers that also like they were, because the Academy Film Archive actually is keeping the prints from the nominated, I think, films. So it's a little bit, this retrospective is lacking some points, but on the other hand, I think we are covering a lot from history and also concentrating like in a contemporary, especially like students, like European students are doing great job. And Milan, maybe I pass the word to you to have this historical introduction. Or
okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Igor. Thank you very much for inviting me to being a part of Animatheca this year and to assist you in completing the 3D animation retrospective program. It was really a nice and exciting experience digging and searching for all the titles, so I think we did a good job, and the audience will have an opportunity to enjoy the films. Well, when we talk about a classical historian, we have a situation that they usually use by measuring a time, so to say, a usual mark for ancient era and new era, and it's BC, before Christ. And talking about animation historian, we could say, especially for those ones who are passionately inclining toward the CGI or 3D animation, they could use, for example, BP for before Pixar and after the Pixar, of course. So it's one of the pivotal point in the history of 3D animation. But for the beginning, I would like to point out some kind of a situation in history and nowadays by trying to connect them in order to point out, I say again, kind of two states of mind. The first one is combination of the guys who did they explore the last 19th century, Otto Fischer and Christian Braune, Germans who have made their experiments with the photography in order to capture the human moving motions, and there is a kind of opinion amongst the film and animation historian that when we talk about those German guy, we actually talk about the first try in motion capturing, or as we know it, we call it mocap. And at the end of the spectrum is video game. You know all Witcher as something totally diverse, comparing the very beginnings a century ago, because we have a situation that we think and talk about The Witcher as something that brought a future to us, and it is I don't know, Assassin's Creed, for example, is another example of that future that came, in which the animators and 3D animation game creators are confidently demonstrate kinetic capabilities and power of convincing simulations by their works, and it's all very interesting. So this is the first situation, and the other one is more recent. In 1972, Edwin Catmull had created his film the hand, and it was accordingly, between all animation historian, one of the first 3D animated short film. And approximately at the same time, it was 1976, when a Croatian film historian, critic, and statist, Ranko Munitic, made his seminal book, Aesthetics of Animation. What is the connection between all those things? 30 years after his book, Ranko made another chapter dedicated to CGI, and in that chapter he pointed out very, very significant fact, and that is in contemporary digital art, we don't have a trace of hand because we don't deal with physical material. So Ranko has inaugurated a very interesting syntagma, thinking in virtual material, in order to leave a trace of the spirit of the author. So I was trying to find symbolic connections between Ed Catmull's hand in 1972 and that missing hand as a metaphor of the author's personality in the text in 2006 or 2007. A few very important, according to my opinion at least, a statement. The first one was by Peter Foldes, who worked for NFB in Canada. The art of 20th century is cinema, the language of 20th century is technology. In my films, said Foldes, I made metamorphoses. I think it's a very important moment because all transformations that are visible in his film are also symbolic presumption of the things that will happen in nowadays digital films, which will try to change the way of perception of modern viewer. That kind of metamorphosis is also very, very important. And Stan van der Beek is one more important name from paleo-digital era. It is very, very cozy and very fine expression, paleo-digital, that marks some period from early 40s, for example, in 20th century on. So Stan van der Beek said once, we're just fooling around on the outer edges of our own sensibilities. The new technologies will open higher levels of psychic communications and neurological referencing. How do I see this statement? This is a strong visionary sense of the future transition of digital animation from technology to phenomenology, because if once digital animation was used as a tool for education, for industrial purposes, and so on, nowadays we have 3D animation as a powerful meaning of art expression. And I will finish with some interesting situation from Belgrade. A couple of weeks ago, I was a member of a commission in a film center in Serbia with 4 guys from Belgrade, and we were supposed to give some money support for the authors which applied with their projects with the short animated films. And a couple of them, while presenting their projects, something like today's speech, they say something like this. Well, in the central part of our film, we have, that strong narration, and we're going to use to support that narration, we're going to use 3D. But you see, it will not be, it will not be just 3D. It would be, and then they stopped at that point because they were obviously missing the word to explain that 3D animation can be very, very sensitive. And when I say sensitive, I don't think it's a mimicry or imitation of physical life, but 3D is very powerful in order to express feelings and to help authors, modern authors, to have their films as a work of art.
Thank you, Milan. Actually, as an introduction, I would just like to mention yesterday we opened actually the festival with Peter Foldes' Hunger, and even more like we present a film that's like Rectangles by René Gedouin, that somebody could ask himself, herself, like what it has to do with 3D animation. It has, because also like Gedouin used specific computer program in order to make those shapes moving. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I would say that this retrospective, it's not like only the classical realistic 3D, which we try to avoid, which like the development, the start of it, commercially exploited was really bad and ugly, I would say, you know, like this trying to get like the texture as close to possible to the human body, to have this realistic, completely approach. I think this was in a way a failure, even though commercially we see those films are making huge box offices right now. But I would like to ask Chris now, actually your own experience starting in this field. If I'm not wrong, you were one of the developers of the Autodesk, or was it? Maya? Yeah. So how it was for you those times? This was like 80s, beginning of the 80s. How was the feeling in the United States, like connected probably with the big industry, like for you guys that you were developing tools that later on like became like a worldwide, how to say, like tool actually, or everybody's using them now?
Well, I mean, there's just kind of like springing off of your comments, Milan. I'd say that there were really two very bigly. Oh no, I mean, yeah. Wildly contrasting kind of thoughts or points of view when I was getting into CG in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. There was, on one hand, this really grassroots, very organic, spontaneous development of this art form, and being maybe pretentious here, the language that was being developed with computer graphics, CGI animation, that it was this anarchistic, wild, unplanned, grassroots development of the tools and the language paradigms of what it would mean to do animation, 3D animation. That's pretty much where I'm coming from, 3D dimensional computer animation. People did not know. People did not have rules. People did not have the technology that was developing to do this stuff. When you talk about Peter Foldes' animation and you talk about morphing, this is a paradigm that is a big part of CG today. And the stuff that I will be talking about tomorrow about facial animation is so based on that very thing that Peter Foldes was showing. What he's showing is morphing between one, what you call source thing, like a face, to a target face. That's how, in his, I mean, you look at it today, it's beautiful, but it is crude. How he makes a chair turn into a woman and then back into a chair, that's morphing. It's taking points on lines and morphing them from the lines that make up a chair to the lines that make this woman. That's one of the pieces of language that was being developed in the 90s, or 80s and 90s. And people were doing stuff with that was just, I'll show some examples of that on Wednesday, that were just wild and uninformed and very childlike. And that's kind of a contradiction for me from what I see with computer animation and how it's developed to this day. That childlike element, because it's so prevalent and so mature right now, it's not really that much there anymore. And that's one of the things that I would like to try to do my small part in maybe reintroducing. because I said there are two wildly different things. One is this kind of grassroots development element, very spontaneous, learning what it's like to morph, for example, from one thing to another, and it's playing around with that. And then there's the other part, which is much more institutional, much more decreed from above and kind of forced on us. And I think, for example, of stereoscopic, 3D animation, where you come into a theater and you put on glasses and wow, things pop out at you. This was a thing that was kind of foisted on us from an industry, movie industry, that saw a way of making even more money than it was making, and charging more per ticket at the door. To me, I mean, if you talk to a lot of people, even at Pixar, who do the rendering, lighting, and compositing, they will tell you how much they hate that technology. Because it is something that is not grassroots. It's not something that got experimented with and played with in a spontaneous way. It was something that was very much institutionally made for making 3D a more powerful, and not necessarily in a good way, in my opinion, more powerful medium and a more lucrative medium. So I think that today, the technology, beyond the technology, it's really a paradigm. That thing of CG is a kind of conflict between the hacker mentality of spontaneously developing something just for the hell of it and playing with it and making it something that could become powerful, that side, compared to the much more hierarchical side of imposing stuff on us to make us sheep in a way, to make us pay more to put on glasses and look at things coming at you from the screen,
This is a joke from the history of cinema, like getting a cake in your face, no? Like Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, they were doing it. So it's an idea
I think of the original film of the train entering the station from and that people fled, ran out of the theater because it was at that time so real that people believe it. Whereas today we are much more jaded. We are so much more skeptical emotionally and in every way skeptical of what we see on the screen, that there's a lot more aggressiveness on the part of forcing these images at you from above.
Maybe Velko, you have to just take the mic.
Because one thing I just wanted to add regarding this stereoscopic 3D kind of thing, I think also it was a way how to bring people back to the theaters. Because now when you have the Super HD TVs at home and all this content online, people are just not going to the theaters. So you need to offer them something there which is uniquely set in this environment. So this was just one of the gimmicks to get you there. But just listening from Chris how things developed in the 80s and in the 90s with computer graphics and with 3D, I think there is the next evolutionary step which is happening right now, and I can kind of see this childlike approach to it is actually animated content which is interactive, which is set in virtual reality, and which is set in augmented reality, because I see these same kind of experiments which are just made for the fun of it. And me and myself and my brother, we are also involved in a few projects which are kind of just hacking this new technology into trying to see how we can break it and bend it and try and create something which is it's not going to be commercial, it's not going to be even viable for anything, but it's just kind of this idea of playing with this technology which is now emerging, and we want to see where it can take us in this sense of storytelling. So for me it would be, I think, this new wave, and also is something which has been developing in the last maybe 5 years or something like this, is using computer game engines to create narrative films or to create animated films which can be immersive in a way that you can interact with the story and these things. So I'm thinking maybe this is that sweet moment until it becomes a viable product, which is going to be snatched up by these huge companies like Pixar or I don't know, one of those evil.
Oculus or something.
Yeah.
Facebook.
And they're gonna commercialize it in a sense, which happened with CG animation in the 90s, I would say. I think maybe 90s is the moment when it became like mainstream.
Yeah. Hey, while we are talking, I'm scrolling through the program in our back. So actually now I'm pointing out an author that I think it's also really important, David O'Reilly, that actually is used the tool in a way that he kind of break it down to create a new language and an aesthetic that only he likes. I would like to ask Dusan something like this is a very important discussion now. I think, can you pass me the mic? Actually, the one side, commercial and actually worldwide and actually like maybe the strongest part of the business 3D computer animated features is really like the box in terms of box offices. On the other hand, authors as Dusan using Blender, which is like a free tool, and trying to kind of like show that it's usable, that it's reliable, that you can achieve like quality on it. On the other hand, like giving it back to the community, to everybody who wants to use it. So it's a kind of like this paradoxical situation that we are facing now. Huh? What's your experience with like those freeware tools and why you choose to work in that way?
Mostly because they are free. The second reason was that simply the community and all feelings about around this Blender is really great. Blender is developing extremely fast. A couple of years ago it was almost unknown, but now it's almost at the same level that commercial software is. It is not only a freeware, means that you can use it for whatever purpose you want, but it's also open source. Means that you can get a program, you can program something. If you know how to program, you can make your own routine. And not only that, you can make program parts of this program and then sell it. Even this license even permits something like that. So this was the main reason I used this Blender. It was the sense of freedom you have if you use such a program. It's kind of communism in the extreme, I would say.
Okay, maybe just still stay with Dusan. SIGGRAPH is like it's the most important market where all those, and I don't know how many of you, Chris, for sure you've been, Velko, Milvoj?
No, but not yet.
Not yet?
Been a big fan of it, but it's...
Dusan, I'm not sure if you went personally.
No, personally.
But
no.
when your film Perk came out, which was made in Hash computer animation, I heard that when it was presented at Pixar, everybody was like, "What is this possible with this like shitty program like that? You did this, and then you created kind of like a buzz about personally in the media, in the press, or like in the community that like not only one tool is the tool, but there are many tools and."
Well, when I was started with 3D animation, which was around the year 2000, I went to the internet and browsing about the prices of the 3D software, and I found out that back then, let's say Maya was around $10,000, if I remember correctly.
At one point, it was something like $150,000.
Oh, really?
Maya is the most expensive one.
No, the Softimage, the Softimage back then was even pricier. I think that Softimage back then was industry standard in the Hollywood. It was, I think, $20,000 back then, around the year 2000. So I was browsing around a little more, and I collided to some page on the internet where was one guy named Martin Hash who made a 3D program all by himself, and he even named it after himself, Martin Hash, an animation master. And he, well, at least at the beginning it was only him, but later the program develops, and I think he employs 2 or 3 programmers. But and he promises everything that Maya has, but for only I think $300. But if you purchase it in the next 2 hours, you can get it for $100. So I purchased that software for $100, and I started working on it. And of course, on the paper, it has all the future of Maya, but most of them wasn't very useful, like hair simulation, global illumination, and things like that didn't really work. Only one shader works quite good. So I have to adapt my story to this shader. So this was the main reason why in my film Chicorin Coffee everybody looks like a wooden puppet because that shader looks like wood. Yes, those are my beginnings. And a couple of years back I went to the Blender, and I think that leap is really quite high. Blender is quite capable program, so I recommend everybody to download it. It's free and use it, but it's a little bit confusing for a novice. If you don't have a lot of experience, you have to be prepared to you will need to invest a lot of your time to learn the basics.
Okay, Dusan, thanks. It's really, this is also like a problematic thing, like discussions about 3D would really then focus on the software, and like many of people, they are not interested, so like what are they talking about, the hell, no?
Yeah.
Because like with other animations, like you have a brush, you have a coal, you have a pen, you have even with 2D, you have a Wacom, and we know, but all those softwares in 3D are really complicated things. And I'm really happy that actually we moved in the last 5 years from those eternal discussion about software to content, to stories, to aesthetic approach that a different author is showing. And now more than ever, I think there is a competition between 3D filmmakers, like to have an original aesthetic vision. Mauro, is it true? Because like you're a little bit younger, and you are not so much kind of like forced to this debate about the beginnings. You just started your own thing, and then you develop your own vision probably. I don't know if like the school you went to, Subfoncom in Arles, it helped you in that way, or?
Yeah, basically school, of course. When I first see some 3D stuff, I didn't like that much. I like maybe the approach, but then not maybe the aesthetic, the visual. So I didn't really question myself which software we used. I thought that at the time that it was any way possible to trick the software. My way to the software is more like, okay, this is the tool, but how to have an incident, like how to even with the tools that already exist, make other effect, like when you try on an analogic thing. Let's say what is happening when I put oil and then salt, and it's like make cooking, and so each accident you try, and then you find your way to talk with this medium. But this is more from an insider, no? I don't I never script really few things, and it was really just okay, this is the world, because it's kind of world of 3D, and I find my place on it, like make my own home inside the 3D.
But for the beginning, I'm showing now a picture from Musorama. It's
Yes.
your first student film. It's a collaboration. You were 4 or 5 different
Yes.
artists. Just maybe that, which tool, what you used, for example, here, because it got this effect is so, how to say, like so painterly or...
Yeah, it was really strange because it was really short. We made in 6 weeks, like 4-minute film in 3D, and with the plot, everything. So it was up to me to make the rendering, compositing. So I thought, okay, the modeling are shitty, the animation is kind of fine. Let's have a chance to the film to have even a little more nicer look, to have an empathic. And so I tried to make some, it's all in 3ds Max and After Effects. And there are just, as you see, some just really, like you do, like when you have the shadow, you can have like the negative side, then some stroke and some brushes, and just to make more simple, more enjoying to the, more empathic to the storytelling. Yeah.
Okay, you will talk more later at the, actually, at your masterclass, where you...
May I add,
please.
is like the last years, I'm also, a lot of colleagues talk me about Blender. I don't want to talk about the software again, but it's incredible how they are really convinced to you, like, yeah, they pass to Blender because everything is possible. And at the same time, in the last few months, I experiment for the first time like this kind of visor, and it was really
3D stereoscopic.
3D stereoscopic, and in Lithuania, and you can draw on it. It's really, I mean,
Tilt brush.
yeah,
Brush in,
really,
is
it's
one.
really interesting
Yeah.
to can really draw in
real time.
in real time and in space. And you can make jam with other artists and doing seeing their path during the draw. And also, what I think I really discover really this Google development about 360, and there are one in the short list now in Oscar, not the 10th
Yes,
first.
it's done.
Pearl. Then
Yeah.
is like inside the car. You can see around the car what is the story during the whole clip, and it's, for me, I think it's not gadget. It's really something. Of course, the guy is not an idiot. So, but he's really give something. The fact that you can have a look.
Okay, innovations more than ever happening right now. Maybe Velko and Milivoy to give him a word as well. Also, one thing that's important for 3D is rendering and compositing. It's a problem that other animators they don't have, you know. So, and for you, I know also Dušan's story, like, you know, having a studio by himself, rendering was quite a problem, and you even invented like a software that was taking down from the internet, like render space from big companies that are using it for usually in December for the holidays. During the year, it's kind of almost free there, and you were collecting the render space. But let's go to maybe Milivoy, because like if I'm not wrong, you are the expert in the studio for technical things.
Oh, I'm the expert, yeah. Well, rendering is definitely a big part when you're thinking about your scenes and everything that you're doing. But I think like any other tool, for example, you have some drawbacks and you have some advantages. Like when you're drawing classical 2D animation, you have to draw each frame. But when you're doing digital, you don't have to do each frame. You just do the extremes, and then the computer makes everything in between. So you get some time there, but you lose some time on the other things. Like if you watch at big movie productions, it's not that animated feature films are 10 times cheaper or 10 times more expensive than, like other films. So I think really at the end of the day, rendering and compositing is just a part of the process. And you have the same problems in any other medium. But one thing I would like to say, like with Mauro also, there are a lot of opportunities in this compositing and in this rendering. It's not like it's just a chore. You have to do it. But there are a lot of creative things that happen in the rendering and in the compositing. So if you actually use it as a part of the process, then it doesn't become like something, oh my God, I have to composite this or I have to render it. It just becomes part of the creative process. And if I can also say, I mean, this is just from listening to the rest of panelists speaking, and this idea is kind of formed here, how CG was first trying to be the most lifelike it can be, and then people started now to experiment with different visuals and creating stuff which are more expressive. But I think when you think about it, it's the exact same idea as in any other medium, creative medium in the world. When you, I don't know the dates or the guys, but I know that the pinnacle at one point of oil painting was that one guy made a fruit and a bird wanted to eat the fruit from the canvas. And he was celebrated as the greatest painter in the world. And then Impressionists came, and Dadaists came, and people came who said, well, this is really not so exciting for us anymore. So it's the exact same thing in CG as well. People are trying to make something which is lifelike, and then I don't know, maybe Benjamin Button happens or something like this, and people say, yeah, well, now, what do we do now with it? Mm-hmm. And I think it's, for me, I kind of hate this boxing of things, like this is, for example, Impressionist art, and this is narrative, or this is realistic, or this is CG, or this is 2D, 3D, whatever, and then trying to kind of look at a different artist by the medium that he's using. So we're 3D artists, or we're 3D animators. No, we're just animators, So in a sense, I think it's when you look in animation in general or in art in general, you always see the same movement. And you can kind of trace it in the same way in CG as well. And this is what's been proven by just by this situation, which is now happening maybe not now, maybe 20 years ago, when people kind of got a bit fed up with trying to make realistic skin, because in essence, what compels art is exploration. And once this aspect is explored and can be easily achieved, it no longer becomes interesting to the creatives, and they move on to try to create other stuff. So,
but this is strange for 3D. As I do also some 2D and etc. I feel 3D is one of the most difficult to master technique. I mean, is the tool that kill you? There is this. I don't know if you ever experiment. So that's why we see a lot of really maybe flat student film, because there's not problem. It's not how they fault. It's because the tool is more strong than them. And so it's take many years to have a deal with the tool, and to can pass the gap to say, okay, now I experiment with you and not you experiment with my nerves.
Use the mic, please.
All right,
Yeah.
sorry. I think that when you have limitations of like, you only have so much that you either know about the tool or can use the tool to do what you actually want to do, that can go one direction or the other. It can go one direction in that the film looks limited because you have not mastered the tool has mastered you, as you are saying, and I've seen lots of examples of that as you have. But then I look at work like that Duchamp has done, where the tool was limited, that you only have one shader that works, and you exploit that and you make that into you turn that limitation into an advantage, and you create a look that is that honors the limitation of that tool and turns your work into something that is special because of the limitation, not in spite of it. And when we're dealing with technology in general, that's the game that we creative people all play, is how do you exploit that limitation rather than let that limitation exploit you as a creative person. And I mean, you were touching on something, if I just continue, like there's a big elephant in the room when it comes to CG, which you've touched on, which is realism. Realism has been a big part of what is the curse of the visuals that you see with computer animation. It was a curse with the example you were given of the bird eating the fruit. There was this big movement in the 16th century called trompe-l'oeil, which is, fool the eye, which is, there's great works that look ultra realistic. And this was kind of like people wanking off because during the 15 and 1600s, people were discovering realism, like perspective, for example. The art of perspective was coming round in the 1500s, and people were like, "Wow, we can do like the incredibly 3D realistic stuff," and it turned into this kind of like wank off of like birds eating fruit and stuff. And then photography came around in the 1800s and killed that. Why do you need to do that anymore, that realistic painting, when you've got photography? And it was that, opening up of photography in the mid-1800s that freed artists to not have to be realistic anymore. And then you have Impressionism and Dadaism and Fauvism and all these isms.
But strange fact is also the community around. No? If you want to do something that is not realistic, since like the last 10 years, you can go to internet and find a community then support you and say like not photorealistic, or the old tutorial you will find is to do mostly like a nice car shading or like a dress of a woman, but you will never find tutorial to make I don't know, like not photorealistic look car.
Yeah.
This is something about the community. So when you are and school, no, when someone teach at school, they will give you really the base. But the base then is not the same that you want to use maybe, and you are lost. You are completely lost.
But I would like to tell again one name. It's David O'Reilly, and please visit his webpage, and you can find on that webpage all his tests, all his jokes, all his tryings, all his. And actually, it's okay for you, Chris. You don't have a page like this. It's more serious, and you do your research in a serious way with the Seneca College students. In this way, I think you are lucky that you have. You are not exploiting them, I would say, but you are working with them in order to develop new ways. And is it like this, your process of working with the students at Seneca?
Well,
in Toronto?
right now I like the past 3 short films that I've worked on, Ryan, The Spine, and Subconscious Password, were films that I did in association with Seneca College with their animation program, which is an amazing animation program because like a lot of the schools, like the Supernfond and Arles and Gobelin and these great European schools very much are concentrated on individual director, auteur approach. In North America, you have schools that deal with corporate, or like getting people ready to work at Pixar or whatever. So they learn the specialization of animation. And great thing about Seneca is that it has a really great balance between people who want to get jobs in animation and people who want to do their own individual visions, and people who graduate from there do both. I mean, right now I'm working both at Seneca College and also the University of Toronto. I'm doing the University of Toronto stuff is more basic research in the computer science of animation. If I have time, maybe I'll show some work later on about
maybe
what.
Not.
Maybe not. Yeah,
Just to stop you here, this the university's research. This was actually also the start of it all, because like at the beginning, I think Ohio. If I'm not wrong,
a lot in Canada, like Waterloo, University of Toronto, and in the States, the University of Utah, New York Institute of Technology.
But it was also the military complex financing the universities to develop computer.
Well, that's a funny thing. It's a funny thing because and no.
Things started
I mean,
that way with the military complex in the early
like the internet. The internet started as a military project. It was called DARPA. It was actually instigated because of the Cuban Missile Crisis and the fact that there was no easy communication, that if telephones went down, that world leaders could communicate with one another with a decentralized network involving computers. So the U.S. Department of Defense started this thing called DARPA, which is how you could communicate between places, or computers at the time, not human voice, but computers that would not involve a center. some central computer or place that, you know, the Russians could bomb. So this decentralized thing over time turned from DARPA, which the D was called stood for defense, to ARPA, which was just simply the decentralized communication. And then in the 70s, that developed into something that universities could use to communicate with each other through computers, and then it became the internet.
Okay, I have to stop it now because it's great, and we could go on for another hour for sure. And even like I'm really sad not to give you a word for asking anything. But let's try to have like some final thoughts, each of us, just to because the meaning of this was like to present the retrospective, and I really hope that you will use the chance to watch it. It starts from tonight on at 10 o'clock at the Slovenian Cinematheque, the first program. And then you can find it in the program rolls over the festival. And is there any Disney guy here or anybody that has any connection with Disney Studios?
So you're gonna kill him or what?
No, because then I want to tell you that, no, just to tell you, everybody who will make it through and will stay with us on Sunday night, the last screening we have at the Slovenian Cinematheque, I'm inviting everybody. And please don't tell this to the media. And I have a media person here. Please, it's out of the record now. We will screen Toy Story from 35mm print. It's a copy we are carrying in the archive of the Slovenian Cinematheque. But of course, like it will be almost mission impossible to get a permission. So it's a hidden screening. It will be free for everybody. And this will be like a nice end of this retrospective, which we didn't talk much about. We are presenting two extraordinary feature animated films, Adama and Cafard. Adama is a French and Cafard is Belgian, and in the use of 3D, they are aesthetically really beautiful and really great and really innovative. And very different. So it's like we closed with this, like the first ever feature made. And I was speaking with Dusan the last day, and he told me, like, tell it, you, Dusan. You said you watch it after a long time, Toy Story, and...
Yes, when I saw the Toy Story for the first time, I was really impressed how realistic it looks. But when I saw it, I don't know, a couple of years later, our perception of reality is so different that now it doesn't look so realistic anymore. Now a lot of games which have a real-time shaders looks better than the very first Toy Story. I mean, the story is still great, but I mean shader, technical parts of the film, it shows that it's been a long way. 20 years, it's prehistoric in the CG time.
Okay, let's try to have some final words, because then, Chris, if you don't mind, really, you have your time tomorrow, so it's like you represent the masterclass, and because I would really like to end with this 1 minute clip from Dusan, which will not be possible to show anymore. So maybe final thoughts?
I can just say quickly that I think that Mauro also touched on this, the complexity of the 3D tools, but I'm really seeing a movement towards simplifying these things, and I'm looking also forward to seeing what the future generations, which are now being brought up with the computers being so accessible and so there, which was not the case for us, how they're going to adapt to these technologies and how they're going to make the creative jump, you know, into the CG world, which I think is really going to be exciting for the future. For me, I think it's these days CG and animation. It's the lines are really blurred. I see a lot of people using 2D and analog techniques in mixed with 3D, and what I'm the most excited about are these experiments which kind of blur the lines between different genres and different techniques of animation. So in this sense, I think that's the future and the moment now. We even devoted one program, it's I think number 5, to 2D mixed with 3D, and you can just see it behind me. So together with Mauro Carraro, it's a thing that it's there to explore, and it's becoming more and more kind of normal for young authors to use, no? And also, if I can just say that, just from the festival years as they're coming, a few years back, it was all CG 3D. Now it's all 2D animation, stop animation. Now the 3D guys are becoming the outsiders. The ghetto.
Okay, I mean, for me, I would go on what you were saying earlier, going on immersive virtual reality or augmented reality cinema. That's the coolest, weirdest, most exciting thing for me. I keep talking about language, you know, like the language of like when you, the audience, are in a completely immersive 3D environment. How do you make a story in which the audience knows where to look? If it's 3D and there's nothing else in there to edit, you know, editing is such a powerful tool in traditional cinema for where to look, where to find the story. To make the audience responsible for finding that story in a 3D environment is so cool and so exciting, and that's where I want to go.
Well, Dushan's statement or comment about his experience while watching again Toy Story is very symptomatic to me, because it is kind of another expression of what I said today, that the focal point of the whole story about 3D animation today is how it changed our way of perceptions. And that's possibly the reason why I made a title for the catalog text, 3D animation tools for miracles, in symbolic way, of course, because we are firstly the ones who watch films and enjoy them, and that's the very important thing.
You will have your say immediately after 5 minutes after we finish here, okay? So,
Yeah, anyway, I want to say that, so anyone that do this on film on 3D is in a way his own a pioneer, no? Because he's trying a new path, because how to say, it's a different shader, so it's like create a new world. Is really you have all the tools to create a new world. So it's you have much freedom as God in a way, and you have to create a unique things. And so even if you don't go in software part, I think there is really incredible what director do now. This is like, it's not like just make material in real material, but it's like to create everything.
okay, and Dusan, please introduce your new film, because like after this we see this 1 minute clip, so maybe just tell.
Okay, this is the film I've been working on for the last 2 years. Now, if anybody has seen my exhibition in the Modern Gallery, then maybe you can see some similarities with my older work. I put some strange creatures in the small box and try to make up good stories. Here is a very short trailer, about 1 minute. Well, that's it.
Okay, so I would like to really thank you all, like being here and talking and being interested, you for listening. If you have questions, please approach us directly, and not me so much, but especially everybody else. I would say that, okay, let's go to sit on the other side to watch Dusan's trailer properly with the lights off.
Hi.